A former Category 5 typhoon named Dolphin is now hours away from hitting mainland China. The target is a densely populated stretch of coastline between Zhejiang and Fujian provinces. Landfall is expected within the next 6 to 8 hours. This is no longer a forecast, this is arrival. Okinawa is still dark. More than 50,000 buildings are without power across the island chain in Kagoshima Prefecture. Some 260,000 people remain displaced from a storm that has already passed over them. The same storm now spins with sustained winds of 162 kilometers per hour locked onto China's coast. Forecasters predict 600 millimeters of rain will fall in the next 48 hours. That is more rain than London receives in an entire year, compressed into 2 days. China has responded by shutting every major port in the storm's path. It has canceled every passenger ferry route. And it has ordered all foreign ships to exit international waters in the Taiwan Strait, an order Taipei has called ridiculous. This is not a routine typhoon landfall. 3 crises are unfolding simultaneously, and the storm is the pressure test revealing all of them. Today we are going to break down exactly where Dolphin is heading, what it already did to Japan, and why this storm is exposing a geopolitical fault line that has nothing to do with weather. No guessing, no dramatizing. Just the facts, the science, and the real stakes for 89 million people in the impact zone. If you have ever been through a typhoon landfall or had to evacuate on short notice, what was the moment you knew it was time to leave? Tell us in the comments. We track every major storm on this planet as it happens. Subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the next one, because this season is already ahead of the all-time record pace. The story of Typhoon Dolphin begins on July 30th, 2026. That is the day this storm became something meteorologists had never seen before. At precisely 166.5 degrees east longitude, a point in the open northwest Pacific Ocean far from any landmass, Dolphin reached Category 5 intensity. Its sustained winds hit 270 kilometers per hour, which is 165 miles per hour. Let me put that number in human terms. That is stronger than any hurricane that has ever made landfall in the United States, stronger than Andrew in 1992, stronger than Michael in 2018, stronger than Katrina, the kind of wind that does not just damage buildings. It peels them apart. It turns debris into missiles. It strips asphalt from roads and bark from trees. And Dolphin achieved this intensity at a longitude where no storm had ever reached Category 5 before. The previous record belonged to Super Typhoon Faye, a monster storm that reached Category 5 status in 1968 further west. For 58 years, that record stood. Dolphin shattered it by reaching the same intensity further east, closer to the international date line, over water that is supposed to be too cool to fuel such a storm. Scientists at Yale Climate Connections described the event as historic. China's Global Times called it exceptionally rare. The formation so far east, combined with the explosive intensification, rewrote what forecasters believed was possible in the western Pacific Basin. To understand what Category 5 means, you need to understand the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. It is the standard system scientists use to classify tropical cyclones by their sustained wind speeds. A storm becomes a Category 5 when its winds exceed 252 kilometers per hour. At that threshold, the damage description in the official guidelines shifts from catastrophic to complete. Buildings collapse. Power grids fail for weeks or months. Areas become uninhabitable. Dolphin did not just touch the Category 5 threshold. It blew past it at 270 kilometers per hour. Its central pressure at peak intensity dropped to levels that indicate an exceptionally violent system. Atmospheric pressure is measured in hectopascals, a unit scientists use to gauge how intense a storm is. The lower the number, the more powerful the storm. Normal sea level pressure is around 1,013 hectopascals. A strong typhoon might dip below 950. When Dolphin passed over Okinawa, its central pressure was 935 hectopascals. That is an extremely low reading. It means the storm was pulling air inward with tremendous force, spinning faster, concentrating its energy into a tighter and more destructive core. Dolphin is also the 13th named typhoon of the 2026 Western Pacific season, but the more significant number is 5. Dolphin is the 5th Category 5 storm anywhere on Earth this year. The all-time annual record is 12, set in 1997. We are only in early August, and 2026 is already ahead of that record pace. The Western Pacific has been generating storms at a rate that keeps forecasters awake at night. The ocean surface temperatures in the region are running above long-term averages. Warmer water is fuel for typhoons. It provides the heat energy that drives intensification. Every fraction of a degree matters, and this year the Western Pacific is a powder keg. The record books had been rewritten, but records are abstract. The first real test was waiting 1,500 kilometers west, in a chain of islands called Okinawa. The eyewall arrived in Okinawa with sustained winds of 162 kilometers per hour. Peak gusts reached 216 kilometers per hour. Let me explain what a gust of 216 kilometers per hour can do. It can lift a vehicle off the ground and roll it. It can tear the entire roof assembly off a reinforced building and carry it down the street. It can snap a steel utility pole at the base as if it were a toothpick. When winds reach that speed, the air itself becomes a solid force. Walking is impossible. Standing is impossible. The only safe place is inside a structure engineered to withstand exactly this kind of assault. And even then, the sound is something people never forget. A continuous roar, like a freight train that never passes, punctuated by the sharp cracks of things breaking. 6 people were injured during Dolphin's passage over Okinawa. That number 6 is remarkably low for a storm of this intensity, making a direct hit on a populated island. It is a testament to Japan's building codes and its emergency preparedness systems. But the physical damage tells a different story. More than 50,000 buildings lost power. In Kagoshima Prefecture alone, 39,000 structures went dark. Approximately 12,000 more lost electricity in Okinawa proper. The power grid did not just flicker. It collapsed across wide areas. Repair crews cannot begin work until the winds drop below a safe threshold, which means thousands of families are spending tonight in the dark, in damaged homes with no air conditioning in the tropical heat, no refrigeration for food or medicine, and no way to charge communication devices. The evacuation numbers are staggering. Some 260,000 people were ordered or advised to leave their homes across Japan ahead of the storm. That is roughly the entire population of a mid-sized city, uprooted in a matter of hours. More than 500 flights to and from Okinawa were canceled. All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines, the country's 2 largest carriers, suspended all service to the islands completely. The airports closed. The ports closed. For a period of time, Okinawa was cut off from the rest of the world, alone with the storm. Now we need to talk about storm surge, because this is the part of a typhoon that kills more people than the wind ever does. Storm surge is ocean water pushed inland by the force of a storm's winds. It is not rain. It is not flooding from rivers overflowing. It is the sea itself rising up and moving onto the land, a wall of water that arrives before the eye wall does. During a typhoon landfall, the wind pushes water toward the coast like a plow. When that water reaches shallow areas near shore, it has nowhere to go but up and inland. The surge can raise sea levels by several meters in a matter of minutes. It sweeps away everything in its path: cars, homes, people. In Okinawa, the storm surge arrived on top of an already elevated sea state, with waves driven by 162 km/h winds compounding the effect. The full extent of coastal inundation is still being assessed, but early reports indicate that low-lying areas took significant water. Landfall is the technical term for the moment a storm's center crosses from ocean to land. It sounds simple. It is not. Landfall is the zone of maximum wind, maximum surge, and maximum destruction. The right front quadrant of the storm, relative to its direction of movement, carries the highest winds and the greatest surge potential. When Dolphin's center crossed over Okinawa, that right front quadrant swept across the most populated areas. The storm did not clip the islands. It did not glance off them. It passed directly over them, subjecting every structure to the full force of its inner core. Okinawa took the first hit and was still counting the damage. But Dolphin did not weaken the way storms usually do after landfall. It re-emerged over open water, reorganized, and set its sights on a target 800 kilometers west, the most densely populated coastline on Earth. The projected landfall zone stretches from Zhoushan in the north to Fuding in the south, a swath of coastline that includes some of the most economically vital territory in China. Zhejiang province sits directly in the path. Its population is 65 million people. That is more than the entire population of France. Just to the north sits Shanghai, home to 24 million more. This is not a remote coastline of fishing villages. This is the manufacturing heart of China, the port network that moves goods to the entire world, the Yangtze River Delta economic zone that generates a significant fraction of the country's GDP. And it is about to take a direct hit from a storm that was a Category 5 monster less than a week ago. China's National Meteorological Center, the NMC, is the government authority responsible for all official weather warnings and typhoon tracking across the country. The NMC has issued an orange-level typhoon alert, which is the second highest tier in China's warning system. The emergency response has been raised to level 3. These are not routine precautions. An orange alert means the threat is imminent and severe. It triggers mandatory action from every level of government. The NMC is forecasting 600 millimeters or more of rainfall in eastern Zhejiang through August 10th. That is more rain than London receives in an entire calendar year, falling in approximately 48 hours. The math on this is brutal. When that much water falls that fast, the ground cannot absorb it. The rivers cannot carry it away fast enough. The drainage systems, even the best engineered ones, become overwhelmed. The water rises. It finds the lowest ground. It fills basements, subways, underground parking garages. It turns streets into rivers. And it does not recede quickly. It sits there, contaminated with sewage and debris, for days. Dolphin's forward speed as it approaches China is approximately 15 kilometers per hour. That is slow. A typical typhoon might move at 25 or 30 kilometers per hour. A slow-moving storm does not just pass over an area and leave. It lingers. It dumps rain hour after hour on the same saturated ground. The slower the storm, the worse the flooding. This is one of the most reliable relationships in all of meteorology, and Dolphin is crawling toward the coast. The response on the ground is massive. In Zhejiang province alone, authorities have suspended 162 passenger ferry routes. Every single connection between the mainland and the outlying islands has been severed. Some 193 offshore construction projects have been halted. All 474 construction vessels assigned to those projects have been ordered to return to port and secure. Maritime authorities have issued 86,000 early warning messages to ships, coastal facilities, and local governments. They have inspected 24,000 vessels to ensure compliance with the return to port orders. More than 10,000 people have been physically relocated from outlying islands to safer ground on the mainland. In the city of Taizhou alone, more than 3,000 fishing vessels have been ordered back to port and tied down. Shanghai Yangshan Port, one of the busiest container ports on the entire planet, has cleared all vessels from its waters by Friday evening. The image is striking. One of the great engines of global commerce, a port that rarely sleeps, emptied of ships because a typhoon is coming. Ningbo Lishi International Airport has suspended all operations from Saturday night. Rail services across the entire Yangtze River Delta have been suspended from Sunday. The transportation backbone of eastern China is shutting down, piece by piece, as the storm closes in. The river systems are a particular concern. The Pearl River Basin, the Yangtze River Basin, and the Yellow River Basin are all forecast to rise above warning levels. These are not small watersheds. The Yangtze is the third longest river on Earth. Its basin is home to hundreds of millions of people. When multiple major river systems flood simultaneously, the crisis compounds. Floodwaters from one basin cannot drain because the other basins are also flooding. The water has nowhere to go. This is what hydrologists call compound flooding, and it is one of the most dangerous scenarios in any typhoon event. The U.S. Embassy in China has issued a formal weather alert for all American citizens in the impact zone. The language is direct: shelter in place, stock food and water, prepare for extended power outages. Do not underestimate this storm. China had done what any government would do: shut down, secure, evacuate. But then Beijing made a decision that had nothing to do with safety and everything to do with sovereignty. And it turned a typhoon into an international incident. The Taiwan Strait is a 180-kilometer wide waterway separating Taiwan from mainland China. It is one of the most strategically sensitive shipping lanes on Earth. An estimated 40% of global maritime trade passes through the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait region. The strait is also the geographic center of one of the world's most dangerous sovereignty disputes. Taiwan governs itself. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province. No major world power formally recognizes Taiwan as an independent state, but many maintain unofficial relations and provide it with military support. The status quo is held uneasily for decades, but the tension never goes away. It simmers just beneath the surface of every interaction between the two sides. As Typhoon Dolphin approached the coast, China issued an order. All foreign vessels must exit the Taiwan Strait during the storm. The order was framed as a safety measure, but the Taiwan Strait is international waters. No single nation has the legal authority to close it unilaterally. Taipei's response came quickly and sharply. The order is ridiculous. China has no jurisdiction over international waters. The statement was unambiguous. Taiwan does not recognize Beijing's authority to control shipping in the strait, even during a natural disaster. The storm, in other words, became a pretext for China to assert a claim it has long wanted to enforce control over the strait itself. This is not the first time China has used weather events or other emergencies to test the boundaries of its territorial claims, but the timing here creates a new dynamic. A Category 5 typhoon is bearing down on the coast. The international community is focused on humanitarian preparation and disaster response. In that moment of distraction, Beijing issued an order that, if complied with, would establish a precedent. If foreign ships leave the strait because China tells them to, then China's claim to control those waters gains a foothold in actual practice. It moves from rhetoric to reality. The storm is not the cause of this standoff, it is the cover. The international response to China's order has been muted so far. Some shipping companies have rerouted vessels, not because they recognize China's authority, but because sailing into a typhoon is suicidal regardless of who claims the water. Other nations have simply not responded publicly. Silence in geopolitics is itself a signal. It can mean many things. It can mean a nation is choosing not to escalate. It can mean a nation is waiting to see what others do. It can mean a nation does not want to draw attention to its own position. Whatever the reason, the silence leaves China's order standing, uncontested in the moment. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center, or JTWC, is run by the U.S. military. Alongside Japan's Meteorological Agency, it is one of the two primary organizations that track and forecast Western Pacific typhoons. The JTWC has been issuing regular updates on Dolphin's track and intensity. Its forecasts are used by navies, commercial shippers, and coastal governments across the region. But the JTWC does not issue political statements. It tracks storms. The geopolitical implications of a typhoon are beyond its mandate, so the storm barrels toward China, and the strait remains contested, and the world watches to see what happens when a natural disaster collides with a man-made one. The typhoon will pass, the floodwaters will recede. But what this storm exposed about the Taiwan Strait will not disappear with the clouds. August 2019. Typhoon. Lakima makes landfall in Zhejiang province with peak winds of approximately 187 kilometers per hour. The storm kills 49 people in China. It triggers widespread flooding across coastal cities. Agricultural losses are extensive. Infrastructure damage runs into the billions. Lakima is the most comparable recent landfall in the same region that Dolphin is now targeting. The track is similar. The intensity is comparable, though Dolphin may arrive with even greater force. The province is the same. The cities in the path are the same. History is offering a preview of what the next 48 hours may bring. The death toll from Lakima, 49 people in China, is a number that carries weight. It is low compared to the catastrophic typhoons that strike less developed nations. But it is not zero. Each of those 18 deaths was a person who did not evacuate in time, or who was caught in a flash flood, or who was struck by debris, or who was in a building that failed. China's evacuation and warning systems have improved in the 7 years since Lakima. The government has invested heavily in disaster preparedness. The early warning message system that issued 86,000 alerts ahead of Dolphin did not exist at that scale in 2019. The coordination between maritime authorities, local governments, and emergency services is more sophisticated now. But the population density in the impact zone has not decreased. If anything, it has grown. More people now live in the path of this storm than lived there in 2019. More buildings stand where Lakima's floodwaters once rose. The rainfall comparison is particularly troubling. Lakima produced devastating flooding across Zhejiang. Rivers burst their banks. Streets became canals. The recovery took weeks. Dolphin's forecast of 600 millimeters or more in 48 hours exceeds Lakima's totals in many of the same areas. And the river basin warnings add a dimension that Lakima did not produce. The Pearl River, the Yangtze River, and the Yellow River are all forecast to rise above warning levels simultaneously. That is a compound flood risk of a kind that even a powerful storm like Lakima did not generate. When one river floods, emergency resources can be concentrated. When multiple major river systems flood at the same time, resources are stretched. Evacuation routes get cut off from multiple directions. The logistics of rescue become exponentially more difficult. Lakima was a warning written in water and wind. 7 years later, Dolphin is testing whether that warning was heard. Okinawa is picking up debris in the dark tonight. Some 50,000 buildings still have no electricity. Repair crews are only now beginning to reach the hardest hit areas. Families are assessing what the storm took from them: a roof, a vehicle, a sense of safety. The recovery here will take weeks, maybe months. And while that recovery begins, the exact same typhoon, having crossed 800 kilometers of open ocean, is now hours from striking a coastline where 65 million people live. Same storm. Two nations, two completely different moments in the same disaster timeline. That contrast reveals something essential. A storm is not a single event. It is a chain of events. Where you stand in that chain determines everything. For Okinawa, Dolphin is already memory, already damage to be counted, already a story people will tell for years. For Zhejiang, Dolphin is still potential, still a forecast, still a thing rushing toward them that has not yet arrived but cannot be stopped. The difference is not the storm. The difference is time. Dolphin did not create the Taiwan Strait standoff. It exposed it. The typhoon did not create China's evacuation capacity. It tested it. Every disaster is a stress test of systems already in place. The buildings that will stand or fall in the next 24 hours were built years ago, under codes written decades ago. The emergency response that will save lives or fail to save them was designed in peacetime, funded in budgets passed long before this storm had a name. The geopolitical tension that flared when China ordered foreign ships out of international waters has roots stretching back to the Chinese Civil War and the Cold War. The storm did not invent any of this. It simply arrived and found it all waiting. The question is never just how strong was the storm. The real question is what was already there when the storm arrived. That is the question every coastal city, every island nation, every government should be asking itself tonight. Not what will we do when the storm comes, but what have we already done? What did we build? What did we neglect? What did we put off because the sun was shining and the sea was calm and the urgency was not yet upon us? The storm reveals the answers, and it does so without mercy. If you live in a coastal city or a disaster-prone area, what is the one thing you have learned to do or keep ready? What is the preparation you wish someone had told you about sooner? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear from people who have been through this, because the best preparation advice does not come from officials. It comes from neighbors who learned the hard way. We track every major storm on this planet as it happens. This is a record-breaking season, and we are not even at the peak yet. Subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the next update. If you know someone in the impact zone, share this with them. The information in this report could help them understand what is coming and what to do before it arrives.